Good morning. Today we're going to be looking at Chapter 11 in our novel, Homer P. Fig. Before we get started, we're going to start with a fill-in-the-blank summary of a review of Chapter 10. Fill in the blanks as I read out loud. Jebediah Brewster takes Homer out to his gemstone mines and tells him that he knows that Stink and Smelt sent Homer to spy. Homer confesses everything to Jebediah because he does not want to lie to him. Jebediah tells Homer to tell Smelt the truth about the fugitive slaves. Later that evening, Jebediah Brewster takes Homer down to the basement where he's hiding the runaway slaves. Our focus question today is how and why is Homer beginning to change? And before we get started reading, we want to look at two vocabulary words. The first one is privy, and that's like an outhouse. So during the Civil War time period, they didn't have indoor plumbing, which meant you had to go outside to use the bathroom, and that was called a privy. And then the second word is civilized, and that means polite or well-mannered. And so this is a progression of humans becoming more civilized. As we're reading today, we're going to do our CSPS strategy to keep track of our thinking while we're reading. So we want to be able to describe Homer, we want to be able to describe the setting, his problem, and how he attempts to solve his problem. Open up your book to page 55 and follow along. Get ready to underline CSPS as we're reading out loud. Top of page 55. A weasel comes a-callin'. There's a whole other world in Mr. Brewster's basement. Must be 20 people hiding down there and 2 babies wrapped in blankets. 2 or 3 families all on the run looking to find a new life. On the run, all the way from Maryland, with slave catchers dodging their trail. The fugitives look thin and hungry and scared. They jump at every sound from above. The squeak of the floor when Miss Bean walks across the kitchen, a window rattling in the wind, a sad cooing of a mourning dove up in the eaves. Every noise makes them nervous and fearful. Mr. Brewster says that fear is something slaves carry with them, that they won't be rid of it until they're safe across the border in Canada with no one to snatch them back. Some of these folks have escaped more than once, only to be seized by slave catchers and taken back. Makes it worse for this particular group because their brave conductor, Samuel Reed, vanished into thin air. They figure if it can happen to him, it can happen to them. If Stink and Smelt have it their way, it will. All I do is offer shelter for a night or two, Mr. Brewster explains. The real work, the dangerous work, is done by the likes of Mr. Reed. The basement is fixed up real nice with rugs on the floor, rows of sturdy bunks, and plenty of food, and special baffles to keep the lantern light from shining out the basement windows. It's way better than the barn where me and Harold live. But no matter how nice Mr. Brewster made the place, it's still kind of a dungeon, even if there are no padlocks or chains. You can feel it in the air, the people wanting to get out, to be free in this place, or any place where they've got to be afraid. I would have these poor folks in my own house as honored guests, but there are many who would burn us out if we did so, Mr. Brewster says, bringing me up out of the basement. Burn us to the ground, they would. Do you think runaway slaves are fearful? Their fear is nothing to the fear the white man has of the black. Abolitionists would preach against slavery, will not let colored worshipers sit with whites in their church. They think it unclean that light and dark should mix. How would they get where they're going? I asked. Same way they got here, he says, on foot in the wagon, but mostly on foot. With slave catchers lurking, they must travel at night under the cover of darkness, especially on cloudy or moonless nights, like this evening, for example. He doesn't say so exactly, but he means the slaves will be on the move tonight. What should I do? I ask him. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. So let's think a little bit about Homer. What's he doing? What is he like? And so, well, we know that Homer came to Mr. Brewster's house because he was going to spy on him for Stinkin' Smelt and to figure out where the runaway slaves are. Right? But now he has, Mr. Brewster has become his friend, and he's learning more about why Mr. Brewster thinks it's important to hide the runaway slaves and to help them get their freedom. So describe Homer in this first box where it says character. Press pause to write down your answer and then play to go to box 2. In box 2, it asks us for the setting, where is Homer? And we know that Homer is in Mr. Brewster's house, and in the first part of the chapter, he's in the basement. You can even go back and find this quote on page 56 in that second paragraph that describes the basement. And you can write the quote describing the basement in the second part. Press pause to write down your answer and then play to get started. And so now we're thinking about Homer's problem. He asks up here, what should I do? And so that's the beginning of our problem. So we'll finish reading page 57, and I really want you to focus on what is Homer's problem. So we're at what should I do on page 57. Mr. Brewster sets me down in the kitchen where Miss Bean has put out steaming plates of beef and potatoes slathered in gravy. Thee must do whatever is true to thee, he says. It is not for me to force a thing upon thee, or to make thee believe as I believe. I never had such a plate of food in my life. Squint wasn't much for plates, for that matter, but what I saw in the basement has killed my appetite. Men and women and children and babies running from those who would chain them up and buy them and sell them like cattle gets me thinking how much I hated it when Squintin' Leach locked us up or whipped us with his belt or sold Harold into the army like he was something Squint owned. Get a gun, I urge Mr. Brewster. He shakes his great white head. That I cannot do. I'm sworn to peace. Miss Bean, I say, tell him to get a gun. Miss Bean chuckles and gives me a sad smile. Gave up that years ago, she says. He will not stir from his beliefs. So right now, Homer is really struggling about what he's going to tell Stinkin' Smelt. He's still unsure if he wants to tell him the truth now that he knows for sure where the runaway slaves are. Press pause to write down your answer and play to continue. And so now we're thinking, how is Homer trying to solve his problem? And at the bottom of page 57, it looks like he thinks a gun will be the answer. A gun he can use to kill Stinkin' Smelt. He thinks that might be the answer. Let's keep reading on page 58 to figure out what Homer does. It says, if you won't get a gun, then tell me what to do, I ask, pleading. He sighs so deep it almost makes the windows rattle. Thee must decide, he says again. But I will say this much. It all boils down to this. A person has only 2 options in life, to do something or to do nothing. What's that supposed to mean? It means that if thee do nothing, thee may stay in this house. Thee will be safe and cared for and will never go hungry. Miss Bean will see to that. Or thee can do something to help Mr. Smelt and his confederates, or something to help those who have escaped their chains. This isn't fair, Mrs. Bean admonishes him, shaking her gravy ladle. He's just a boy, and a scrawny one at that. I know, says Mr. Brewster, sounding regretful, but boys are fighting this cruel world. Boys are enslaved, and boys own slaves. None may escape. All must decide. If you won't get a gun, then give me one, I asked, begging. There are no guns in this house, not for thy purpose. I shake my head. Comes to me that Jebediah Brewster is crazy, and that's like God himself being crazy, as crazy as plagues and pestilence, as crazy as that tree that fell on my father and my dear mother dying so young, and Squint being so mean. I can't stand another minute of this, with all the questions in my head, trying to decide things that are better left to God and Mr. Brewster. Where are you going? Miss Byng calls out when I get up from the table. What are you going to do? But I'm running out the door without an answer, running into the sooty blue darkness where Smelt is waiting. Smelt with his knife and probably a gun too, and I've got no idea what to do, no idea at all, except one thing. I can't do nothing. Nothing is not an option. And so now, we're thinking Homer, he ran out of the house and he's decided to do something, but the reader is left unsure about what Homer is going to do next. Is he going to lie to Stink and Smelt, or is he going to tell them the truth? So we're unsure about what he's decided to do, but we do know he's going to do something. He's not going to do nothing. Press pause to write down your answer, and then play to think about this paragraph. How is Homer beginning to change? Why is he changing? So I want you to think about what Homer was like at the beginning of the text and what he's like now. And how has he changed? How is he different now than he was at the beginning? And why do you think he's different? Silently write your paragraph and get started.